most women are realizing the traditional life they work so hard for isn't actually making them happy. Jess, was there a moment when you realized your life needed to change?
Yes, being in marketing and PR, it's always been a very busy hustle and bustle type of environment. And, that's been great for so many years, but when my husband retired, we realized we wanted to explore more, have some freedom and flexibility, and that's when I realized I really wanted to try and make some changes towards that would let us live the life that we wanted to enjoy.
And I want to welcome my guest to Inspire Travels with Patti. If you are new here, I created this podcast and YouTube channel to inspire you to live life fully. And that is through adventure, unique experiences, going out and exploring and meeting incredible people. Today's guest, Jess Walker of Jess Lifestyle Marketing, has more than 20 years of experience in marketing, public relations, and strategic communications. She decided to make a career shift from working for somebody else, for working for someone else, to working for herself. She and her husband, Bennett, have been RVers for over 6 years, and 2 years ago decided to go full time. And during that time, they created social media and YouTube channel, The Walkers Wandering. Welcome, Jess Walker, to Inspire Travels with Patti.
Thank you for having me. It's so exciting to be on here. I love just hanging out with you and talking with you in general. So this is just a big bonus to that too. And just excited to share, our journey and, something that we never thought we'd be doing. And here we are today. So kind of the path that got us here.
Yes, and we get on and we start talking. I know we were on a call a couple days ago, actually, and an hour and a half flew by. So
It
this is what it's
does.
about. I want to take from those conversations that we've been having that I know helped me and encouraged me and bring them to my listeners so that hopefully they will be encouraged. Now, this show is not to convince somebody to go full time RVing, but if that's what you're thinking about, we'll give you some help in making some life changing decisions. We talked about that moment in the open on what what it was that had you decide that you needed to make a life change. You said your husband Bennett retired. You guys are not of retirement age. I want that just to be known. So what was that conversation? What led up to this idea that the life you had planned, educated on, and worked so hard for was not the direction you wanted to continue to go in?
When I was going to school and pursuing my career, I always just thought about, the professional side of things. And while I was in it, that was definitely where I was at. I think a big shift for so many people, obviously, was the COVID pandemic, which pushed people to kind of reevaluate, priorities, choices in life, choices in careers. And, it did that for us too. He was still working. I obviously was still working too, but I was working from home and it forced me to slow down. Before that, I was at events every night, networking during the day, working, just nonstop, always available. And to have that slowdown was a nice shift for me. And then, of course, many years ago, seeing when loved ones go through health, challenges and stuff like that, it makes you stop and realize what's important. I love my job, I love my career, but obviously I want to live and experience things and do that while we can, while we have our health. And so when he retired, he wanted to do a big long RV trip. We took 3 months out west and we loved it. And we came across people doing it full time. And then we started kind of toying with the idea over the next few years, seeing how it worked for us to be together for so long, because you're 24/7 together, and talking about it. Because the only thing, we were in Cape Coral, Fort Myers, Florida at the time. That's where we were living. And the only thing that held us there was my job that I was working at the time. Our kids are grown. They're in different parts of the country. We didn't have family there. And it's a very popular place. So it was very, touristy, very traffic driven. And we just thought, well, let's, do it. And it was a fun conversation because you're like, well, I want to do it. Do you really want to do it? Or are you just humoring me? And so we took a year. Once we decided we were going to do that, we took a year to plan. and make this happen. And now we've been full time for 2 years. So essentially 3 years ago, we thought, okay, we've got to start lining up doctors and mail and voting and all of the things that you don't really think about when you're stationary because it's just there. And you have to be a little bit more intentional when you're traveling.
Right.
It was just a fun transition to take that leap, and our girls are in different parts of the country, so it helps us to spend significant time with them when we're doing this. And it really was just between seeing family struggles with health and all that, and just realizing that our bodies need to slow down was kind of that shift that pushed us towards it.
Yes. And for people who don't know my backstory, I was actually a teacher for 20 years. So I had gone to school, had my master's, and then went on and had 45 credits. So I was like a hop, skip, and a jump from a doctorate degree. And I don't say that to brag in any way, shape, or form, but after 20 years, I said, no more. It just wasn't the lifestyle I was working. Now, I loved working with kids. The school system was broken. It still is, I believe. But there was that point where I said, I am just working to work, and I wasn't fulfilled. I wasn't feeling happy. And so, I told my husband, like, one more year and I'm done. We need to figure it out. And I'll be honest, it was scary as heck.
Oh, yeah.
We didn't have a great plan. I'll be honest with you. I do recommend a plan, and we'll talk a little bit about that. And just made that jump. And then, like you said, during COVID, seeing people getting ill, seeing people passing away, you start to realize life is short. And I had somebody say the other day, unless you're in your 20s, life is short, kind of thing. And that makes sense because we just don't know. And so that isn't to scare people. I don't want people to live in fear, but that's to have people look at, am I really living this fulfilled life, or waiting for that day I retire, that day I could go on vacation, take the trip. So we want to talk more about that. Full-time. Now, you took a year to plan your full-time RV life. I took about 2.5 months, which I don't necessarily recommend. It turned out. But let's talk a little bit about it. And I think the main reason people don't make that change is the fear.
Yeah.
So let's talk about it. Was it scary for you guys? Did you have that fear?
Yes and no. I think you get excited. It's something completely new, completely foreign. I mean, if you'd asked us 5 years ago if we would be living in an RV, I would have said, what are you talking about? And of course, me in college and growing up, if you'd have asked me that too, I'd be like, living in a trailer out traveling around? Probably not. But once we made that decision, we talked to our realtor because we owned a house in the lot next to the house in Cape Coral. We said, talk to us about the market. If we want to be on the road by April of 24, which was our target date, when do we need to list the house? What do we need to prepare for it? Getting things cleaned out. I mean, we had a big house for 2 people and loved our house. It was great for entertaining. We loved our neighbors. We had a great neighborhood group. And so we had regular parties and stuff. And I think we had about 2,300 square feet of space. It was a big house, had a pool, we had a good setup and loved what we did then. So trying to figure out the timing on that. But that meant we also had to empty out a very large house as well. And we do have a 10 by 10 storage, and we have it with like sentimental things. You have photo albums, you have things passed down, some furniture pieces. So very small things that we kept, because eventually we will have to get off the road. It's inevitable, whether it's health or just tired of doing it. And I doubt I'll ever be tired of it. But we knew that we needed to plan for that. So multiple garage sales, trying to get the house cleaned out. And then, looking at, okay, how would we get our mail? How would we get our, what our driver's license, our state of residence and all of that. And there's some really good businesses and organizations out there that offer these as services. And so, we work towards that. The other thing is doctor's appointments. We have family in Gainesville. That's where my husband was born and raised. And, we spend a lot of time there. And my dad is just about an hour and a half away. And so we thought, well, let's make that our quote unquote home base. So we tried to get all of our doctors and stuff set up here so that when we're visiting, we just pile them all into a month or two and knock it out. But you just have to think about some of those things too. Our dog, we travel with a dog, thinking of her vet visits and her doctor's appointments. So that year was a year of planning and working with the realtor to get the house, listed in the right price range and everything, and just get it all lined up where hopefully, it worked out to happen at the perfect time. And then the lot sold separately. So we kind of had to have two real estate listings. So it's just a lot to kind of work through. But my husband's a big planner. And so it's definitely up his wheelhouse and alley to do that. And he was retired, so that was his focus. And then I was still working for a company at the time. And our initial thought was I would still work for them and just go back to Southwest Florida for a couple of months in their busy season. But once we hit the road, it just was so hard to know that I have to be back in this restricted area. I had to do certain things. And I love that the people there, the job was a great job. I realized that I just wanted that freedom, and we were working hard for it.
And so the whole thing is the planning that at any stage, people throw their hands up and say, this is too much. This is too difficult. You talked about having a lot of friends. What were people saying? I know I had people think we were homeless. Honestly, I had somebody reach out and said, hey, if you need a place to stay. And it was like, no, we're not homeless. This is a choice. So what were your friends and neighbors saying about this crazy idea? Because to most people, I'm selling everything. I'm going full time on the road. That is crazy to a lot of people.
Oh, yeah. It is a foreign idea for so many people. And we waited to tell our neighbors very last because we just felt so guilty because we knew somebody else was going to have to be in the neighborhood with them. That was my biggest dread, was telling them, at the end that, hey, we're not going to be around. And so, yeah, people had that question. They're like, well, where are you going to live? And I'm like, in the RV, like what we do for those 3 months, when we're traveling out west or out, up north, we're just going to do that every month, like somewhere different. And when we say, oh, we're going to be home for Thanksgiving or this, they're like, well, where are you going to stay? And we're like, well, probably the RV park, or resort or something like that. So it is people, especially when we first took off, we had family that liked to tell people that we were becoming homeless, like you said.
Right.
And it's just, it's difficult for people to understand. There's like a family condo, it's on the market right now, but they're always like, well, if you need a place to stay, you can stay there. I'm like, we have a place to stay,
right,
right. And people, it's interesting too, when you pick this lifestyle, your house is always with you. So when you have to travel and go to a hotel, or like if you needed to get out and move into a condo, it's just, you got to take all your stuff. It's a lot of work. And I'm like, the house is fine, like in the RV, and it's, it's like 360 square feet or something. I don't know. It's, it's small, but it's ours. And it's, it makes you really evaluate what you need in life. Because when we started doing that garage sale stuff, I walk through the house every day as we get ready for an upcoming one. We had several, and becomes addicting. I just start grabbing things off the wall. I'm like, this can go in this weekend sale, and this can go. And I just start throwing everything out there, and, it becomes obsessive. You're excited about it.
Right. And, talking about this idea of what people think, first of all, once they get past the idea that, no, I'm not homeless, I'm good, a lot of people just can't get that idea of living in an RV. I'll be totally honest. Before I moved into the RV, I had been in one, and I say this all the time on the podcast, for 7 total nights. We would take the RV, go for a weekend to an RV resort, hang out with friends. That was my experience. So even I was kind of like, all right, this doesn't make sense necessarily to me. And you get past that, and I just jumped on this, like, yeah, this is cool. I have my bed everywhere I go. I have my espresso machine. I have my stuff. And yes, while it's small, whole nother conversation because now you have these new places, you have the outside. So while there's the people who don't quite get it and understand and almost look at us with judgment, which is fine, there's also people that are envious. I've had so many people say, I
Absolutely.
wish I could do that. That sounds so cool. I've always wanted to do that. And I wanted to bring you on because what we're here to get people to understand it may not be full time in an RV. We're not trying to push that. But if there's something that you say, wow, I'd love to try that, I'd love to experience that, just do it. Now,
Yeah.
in this time frame, you also took a career that you worked 20 years plus on because you had the education piece, you worked for a company for 20 years. And at some point, you said, yeah, I'm going to go on my own. What was that like? What was that moment that you were like, not going to work for this company anymore?
Yeah, and same there. That was probably scarier than transitioning into RV life. I would have to say, because I was 45 at the time. I'd never in my life thought I was going to own a business or be a consultant or a contractor. I thought, it's always just easier to work for a company, let them deal with, taxes and benefits and all of those things. And I just realized, the freedom and the flexibility to be able to be where we want to be or where we need to be, because sometimes that's the case with, family and loved ones. You might need to be helping out with them, was far more value to me than a big salary or, this huge benefits package. And so that was the other thing we'd also figured out too, because when my husband retired, he put me on his benefits. And so that way I always had that. I didn't have to get that separate. So luckily I didn't have to do that when I launched my consulting business. But it was exciting. And it's one of those things I can relate to the memes that I see every day that say, I'm a business owner. This is the best day ever. And 10 minutes later, I'm like, oh my goodness, what have I done? You just go through that wave of emotions, but just knowing and hanging on to whatever's meant to be will be, no matter your beliefs, your backgrounds, just knowing that things ultimately work out the way they're supposed to. And I know my husband was very supportive and he said, look, we'll probably have a year where you're not making any money, but let's do it. And luckily for me, the relationships that I had built through my career in Southwest Florida, I was able to get a few people that were like, oh, you're doing this now on the side. Let me just give you some projects that I want you to help with. And so again, it's not massive, salary, but it's enough for us to enjoy what we're doing. And like I said, to me, the experiences outweigh any like big dollar salary because we're seeing so much. There's so much in this country. I mean, we haven't even touched on going, abroad. Just being in this country, there's still so many things that we want to go see and every place typically we go to, we're like, we didn't have enough time here. We've got to come back.
Right.
And so knowing that if I did my own consulting, I could control my schedule because I know I have deadlines. I have things I need to meet. Sometimes that might mean that I'm doing work on the weekend when places are busier because on a weekday, you could go to a state park or a national park and it not be near as crowded. Or I might be doing work in the evenings, and so it just gives us that chance to explore and get out. But it's still, even today, I mean, next month, June of this year will be 2 years that I launched it. And it's an exciting thing. And I still can't believe it's been 2 years either. So,
And it's like you said, it's still change and the unknown could be scary. And I want to acknowledge that for people, things worked out. They seem like they worked out rather easily. You were able to get health insurance. I could hear people saying, well, I don't have health insurance. I'd have to work on that. Or I don't have this support and all of these, yeah, but kind of things.
yeah.
Yeah, it is kind of scary. You make the decision that, like you said, the freedom outweighed the scariness, hey, I'm starting a business over. I might go a year or more without making little to any money. Sometimes you're spending more money than you're making.
Yeah.
And if it's worth it, it's like you said, for me, traveling full time in an RV with all of the issues and things that you have to deal with, an RV breakdown, I will say over and over again, it was worth it. I
Yeah.
saw things, I met people, I had experiences that I can't really even explain to people.
Right.
Because once you get to the point where you're not on vacation and you're in that place, it's a whole different thing. And so
Yeah.
again, whether people are looking to just take that trip or make something of a career change or start that business while they're still quote unquote working, you find a path, find a
Yeah.
way to do it. And that's the message here.
It might not be that you get to do what you want to do tomorrow, but if you know this is what I really want to work towards, like you're saying, find that path, build that map of saying, okay, if I do this in the next 3 months or this in the next 6 months, that gets me this much closer to it. And not saying to wait till retirement necessarily if you want to do certain things. Like, you know, I've mentioned this was never in the cards for us. Like neither of them, one of us ever thought, oh, we'll just live in an RV and drive around. But we when we decided on it, we knew, okay, as much as you're excited and you want to say, let's go tomorrow, like there's things to put together for it. And even with my business, like when we started it, in this lifestyle too, you still have to be budget, conscious. And that meant maybe not doing as many nights out to dinner, or maybe, cutting back on things until we got to that point. And that's where you just have to plan whether, like you said, it's a long-term or a short-term thing. It's all achievable if you just try to really think about the steps and not the overall overwhelm.
I'm just going to reiterate, you have a vision, you think about what you want, you plan as best you can. I'm a planner. I realize sometimes all the best laid plans are, yeah, the saying, it's like sometimes you just have to let things flow and life happens, and you have to appreciate the things that come into your life that are great, that are often unexpected, and get through those things that, hey, I didn't see that coming kind of thing.
Exactly.
So there's that. I just want to admit I've never really been that flexible person that didn't have an idea of the plan, what was going to happen next. And in life, that doesn't always go so well. So I hope from this people are taking out whatever that is they're thinking about doing,
Yeah.
whatever they're looking to do. Just start by admitting, first of all, I think it's admitting that this is something you want to do. And then start down that path. Talk to people who support you. Talk to people who don't say, no, you can't do that, or no, you shouldn't do
Yeah.
that, or what are you thinking moving into an RV kind of thing. No, talk to the people who are supportive.
Yeah.
So tell people how they can get in touch with you and your business now, Jess Lifestyle Marketing. Talk a little bit about what you do for people.
So my background is heavy in public relations, which is more of that organic and what we call earned media. And so it's helping companies of any kind. I work with campgrounds, salons, restaurants, magazines, all across the board, different industries, of getting their brand out there and getting awareness to their target audiences, whether it's through press releases, social media, building a strategic communications plan. There's just multiple ways to accomplish getting that awareness. And that's where I come in to kind of help them either map it out so that they can do the steps, or do those steps with them along the way to help them get to that point. And being myself as well, you're going to only work with me. I'm not looking to grow this to be like a huge business. It's just something I want to do to support myself and to support others. And so it's more, you're always going to work with me. And I can do long-term ongoing projects, or I can do it just a single project, and I talk to people about what their goals and their needs are and what their budgets are, and try to find a way to find that middle ground. And it's exciting to me because in doing this, I'm getting to do the things that I love. The 20 years, yes, is great. And I've done a lot of different industry work, applying my skills to retirement and higher education and, accounting, and all of these, have used my skills. But anytime you're working for a company, there's always going to be things you have to do that aren't really up your alley, not in the wheelhouse that you want to do. And Where with this, of course, you have the tasks that you have to do, admin stuff, bookkeeping stuff, things like that. But for the most part, what I pick and choose to do are the things that just make me happy and that I thrive on. Um, and flexibility with my time. It's I might be emailing from, out in the middle of nowhere or something, but I'm usually pretty reachable unless there's no signal. And I always try to make sure that clients and people know that if they need to get me, just call, email, text anytime. And then my website will have my information on there, and it's pretty simple. It's jesslifestylemarketing.com.
Okay.
And people can find, all of the social links, the contact links there, and the number on there is my cell phone. So, I encourage people to reach out if they have questions. I always do consultations without charge, because you can't really give anybody any insight until you know about them and what they're looking for. And so it's always nice to just have a conversation and see what's out there.
So for those people, not only do we talk about people who are looking for a shift, maybe in their career, a job, a thing they're doing. I know you and I have talked, you have already been so supportive to me in my new role. For those people who aren't aware, I am working with Happy Grounds, and they are a group of 18 campgrounds. I'm super excited. I'm getting ready to leave and go back up and see a bunch of the campgrounds, actually a couple days after the recording of this interview, and you've already been incredibly supportive. And so I'm going to encourage people, reach out to you. As you said, you do a consultation, you don't charge for it. And then people could see like, oh, I had this idea, this thought about a business, or I have a business and here's where I'm struggling. And I know if there is something that you are not able to help with, you will make suggestions and recommendations. So
Absolutely.
I want to encourage people. So, and the website I will put in the show notes for people. One final suggestion. What's a final thought for people who maybe aren't totally happy with where life has taken them?
Everybody's been there, and it's definitely not a singular thing to somebody, but my suggestion to them would be find and think about what would make you happy, and then think about the steps to get you there. Because one thing we all have to deal with is life is short. And no matter if you think I'll do this when I retire, or I'll do this later, you're not guaranteed that. And so that is my big thought is, if there's something you can do sooner and it's going to make you happy or let you do something that you enjoy, embrace that and find a way to get to that, is the biggest recommendation I can give.
And I couldn't agree more. And I'm going to encourage people to reach out on social media. We'll have that in the show notes. Reach out to you. They can see what you're up to. They can connect with you on social media as well as going to your website. I'm encouraging people to call you, get on a call, and, find that direction, find that, like what's next for me kind of thing. And I want to thank people for listening. And it is really helpful. It is so helpful for me to have people hit that follow button, the subscribe button. So whether you're on a podcast or you're on the YouTube channel, I also have social media, Instagram and Facebook. Everything's under Inspired Travels with Patti. And I just want to thank you just so much for taking the time to be on and sharing your experiences and telling us how it was. Thank you.
Thank you. It was such a pleasure for me. Thank you.
And I hope this episode inspired you, my listeners, in some way. And if it did, I hope you'll connect on Inspired Travels with Patti, because living life fully is about taking that one simple step.